This is such fulfilling work, but it may not be fulfilling for everybody. I will tell you it's especially fulfilling for me because a number of years ago, I was a mess and it required someone to help me see through the fog. I needed someone to help me see how I was being driven unconsciously by a whole lot of fear. What I get to do every day that brings me so much joy is I get to help others see through their own fog. And boy, at the end of the day, I sleep great. It feels so good to help people the way I've needed to be helped in my own life. What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Fearful Giants, the podcast that's getting loud about something most leaders never talk about out loud, their fear. I'm Clay Stelzer, executive coach and founder of 1560, the executive coaching company. And every week I sit down with a founder, a CEO, or an executive leader to talk about the stuff they're not typically talking about or posting about on LinkedIn. And every once in a while, I will not have a guest. I will just bring to you some thoughts and ideas that occurred to me, having coached a number of executives throughout the week. And that's what we're doing here today. I'm really excited about this chat today. I've been thinking a lot about this. I've met a number of people and had some great discussions this week. Some people that are deeply fulfilled and happy. And then I've had some discussions with some CEOs that were not all that happy. And when I consider all of the folks that are really, really fulfilled and happy, there are some very consistent themes. There's some very consistent things happening. And I want to introduce to you what I'm seeing. When I meet someone that is especially happy and fulfilled, two things are always present. One, they're helping someone in a way that they have needed to be helped themselves at some point in their life. First part. Second part, they're doing that helping using their unique skills and talents. Okay. So again, they're helping someone in a way that they've needed to be helped in their life, and they're doing so using their unique skills and talents. Now, some of these folks are building a whole business around helping people the way that they've needed to be helped, but others are in business doing something that has nothing to do with their past or the way they've been in their past, but they're finding small opportunities throughout their day or their week to do what I just mentioned, to help in a very unique way. So I want to break down this recipe, these two elements. So first, helping someone the way you've needed to be helped. So, I'm a coach, I've got a coaching company, and I pinch myself every day that I get to do this. This is such fulfilling work, but it may not be fulfilling for everybody. I will tell you it's especially fulfilling for me because a number of years ago, I was a mess and it required someone to help me see through the fog. I needed someone to help me see how I was being driven unconsciously by a whole lot of fear, trying to create some sense of worth in the world. What I get to do every day that brings me so much joy is I get to help others see through their own fog. And boy, at the end of the day, I sleep great. It feels so good to help people the way I've needed to be helped in my own life. Now, if you're listening to this, you've had adversity in your life as a CEO or as just any old person listening to this podcast. Maybe you're not even in business, but let's talk about business first. If you're in business, if you're a CEO or a senior executive, you've dealt with or in adversity. You've had to lay off people. You've had to restructure. You've had to fundamentally shift the course of your business. Maybe you've been fired. Maybe you were over your head. You were promoted to a position that was not a good use of your skills and talents. You get it. And I would encourage you to think about, when have I really struggled the most? How have I struggled the most? What were the points in my career that were really, really difficult? And what would it feel like if I could help someone move through those very same experiences that I moved through? On the personal side, you can think about your adversity. You can think about maybe you've had a struggling child, or maybe your marriage has in the past been not in the best space. Maybe you were a first-time home buyer and you were deeply confused and couldn't get a loan, or whatever it might be. We have adversity. It's who we are as human beings. Life isn't easy all the time. But imagine, and I am sure many of you can relate to this, the feeling you get by helping someone go through those experiences that you've already been through. So there's a second piece to this. Not only is it great and fulfilling and deeply personal to help someone in a way that you've needed to be helped, but it's how you're helping that makes all the difference. So there's a number of people out in the world that have talked about this thing called zone of genius. I learned about this a number of years ago. A guy named Gay Hendricks wrote a book called The Big Leap. And part of his theory, he distinguished between the zone of excellence and the zone of genius. Now, most executives are living in their zone of excellence. Not all, but many are. And what that means is when you're in your zone of excellence, you are really good at what you do, arguably better than most people. And you're getting rewarded for doing exactly what you're doing. And you may be a CEO and you're killing it, and your advisors, your investors, they're in love with you. And at the end of the day, you go home and you're exhausted. You're good at what you do. You get rewarded for what you're doing. So you keep doing what you're doing, but it's a tax. There's a price you pay for being in that routine. That's zone of excellence. Different from that is zone of genius. In zone of genius, you are just as good as folks in zone of excellence. However, you don't even realize that whatever it is that you're doing is not as easy for everyone. It is intuitive for you to do what you're doing. It's simply easy, and you're in a flow state. And the real distinction between zone of excellence and zone of genius, when you're in your zone of genius, it is energizing. Instead of energy depleting, you are energized by the work. Now imagine helping someone in a way that you needed to be helped, but doing so in an intuitive way that is energizing. That's fun. That's a real great recipe that I hope you walk away with as to what can take a life from being flat to a life feeling deeply rewarding. Now, as I mentioned, sure, you can restructure your business and create a whole life for yourself in business around this formula like I have as a coach. And most people aren't going to do that. I encourage you to think about it, but most people aren't going to do that. And I think that's great. But what I do encourage you to do is consider this recipe, or consider using this recipe as a tool in your day-to-day. So I find this to be an especially great recipe for getting out of a rut. If I'm in a shitty mood, I lose a client, whatever the thing is, I'm in a scarcity mindset. This recipe is an incredible recipe for pulling myself out of that rut and getting present. Here's a story from a number of years back. When I was early on in my coaching career, I had yet to learn the lesson around diversifying my book of business. I had two very large clients that made up most of my business. One was a significant sized company. I was coaching 10 executives at the very top of the company. It was a business within a business. But anyway, that was client one. Client two was another large company. I was coaching 6 of their top executives. Now, within 3 weeks, both of those companies reorged. And long story short, the business went away. So like that, I'm down 16 or 17 clients. That's a massive part of a coach's book of business. Now you can imagine if you're me, that didn't feel very good. It's real easy, especially as a new entrepreneur, to get into this scarcity mindset. Oh shit, what am I going to do now? How long is it going to take me to build my book of business back? And on and on and on and on and on. And if you're not careful, you can be in that state for a long, long time. But something really interesting happened. I had another client that I still had, and I hopped on a call with that person, and I just showed up and I helped that person the way I know to help. And I walked out of that call feeling present, feeling grounded, feeling helpful and worthy. It feels so good to leverage my skills in a way that I've needed to be helped in the past. I know I've said this 10 times already, but I want to keep relaying this message. So anytime I find myself in a scarcity mindset, what can I do now to give? When I don't think I have enough, can I give what I have? If I do so in my zone of genius in a way that means something to me. Anytime I do that, I feel better. And it's an amazing process and practice that I have seen over and over and over again make such a difference in anyone's life, especially CEOs that are unhappy versus ones that are happy. This is quite often the distinction. And the cool thing about giving what you don't have to give, or I should say, giving what you do have to give when you don't feel like you have much, it's amazing how the world shows up when you show up. The more I do this, the more I trust that if I'm relying on my gifts and I am simply giving in a way that is purposeful or meaningful to me, It's just amazing. The world shows up. The phone rings with a new client. I can't explain it, but I love being in this trusting place when I'm putting my energy forward. The world meets me. So I encourage you to experiment with this, play with it, write back comments or examples of this or other stories. Let's have a conversation here. This is such a fun, and meaningful conversation. In review, people that are especially happy, grounded, and fulfilled in life are helping someone in a way that they needed to be helped. And they're doing so using their unique skills and talents. Well, I really appreciate you being here and listening to this. I hope it was valuable to you in some way. If you enjoyed this short video, please subscribe or follow wherever you listen to podcasts. Share with other leaders, leave a review if you're inclined, and help more people feel what's possible when fear doesn't run the show. Thank you so much.